My parents left everything to my brother in their will while I was paying their bills, aka funding my golden brother's secret life with my ex-fiancé. So I cut them off financially, and now they are begging. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much! Now, let's start the video. Hey Reddit, I've been lurking for years but finally made an account to get this off my chest. It's been eating me alive and I need to vent somewhere. This is going to be long, so buckle up. So, I'm Ethan, 31 male, and I'm what you'd call the responsible one in my family, always have been. My parents, David and Linda, both pushing 70 now, aren't great with money or really anything practical. For the last 5 years, I've basically been their financial safety net, paying their mortgage, covering utilities when they come up short, buying groceries, fixing stuff around their house, you name it. Not that I'm complaining. Okay, I am now, but I wasn't then. They raised me, so helping out seemed like the right thing to do. Then there's my brother, Ryan, a classic case of youngest child syndrome if you've ever seen one. Dude's 28 and has never held a job longer than, 3 months. Always quits because the manager was out to get him, or the working conditions were toxic, or whatever excuse sounded good that week. Meanwhile, he's living in our parents' basement, playing video games all day and contributing exactly 0 to the household. But somehow, he's always been the golden child. Ryan just hasn't found his passion yet, Mom would say. Or Ryan's a free spirit. He's not meant for the corporate world like you. Yeah, because playing Fortnite 12 hours a day is really following your artistic dreams, bro. My relationship history isn't exactly Instagram-worthy either. I've had a string of girlfriends that never worked out for one reason or another. The latest and worst was with Sarah. We were together for 3 years. For the last 6 months, I thought we were solid, had the whole future planned out. Wedding next spring, house in the suburbs, 2.5 kids, the whole package. Then, out of nowhere, she hits me with, I need space, and I'm not sure we want the same things anymore. No real explanation beyond that, just packed her stuff and moved out while I was at work one day. Left the ring on the kitchen counter. Classy! That was about a year ago, and it messed me up pretty good. I threw myself into work even harder after that, picked up overtime, volunteered for every shitty project. No one wanted. My social life basically evaporated. The only people I saw regularly were my parents when I'd go over to fix their leaky faucet or whatever household disaster they couldn't handle that week. And through all this, I kept paying their bills. I know I'm a sucker, but they're getting older, and I didn't want them stressing about money. Plus, they let Ryan live there rent-free, and someone had to make sure they didn't lose the roof over their heads. That someone was me, because it sure as hell wasn't going to be Ryan. Every month, like clockwork, I'd transfer money for the mortgage. My dad would sometimes try to refuse it. We can handle it this month, son, but then I'd check their account. Yeah, I had access because I'm the one who set up their online banking and see they were in the red again. So I'd transfer the money anyway. I even helped them refinance a couple of years back when rates dropped, got them a much better deal, saving them like $300 a month. Did all the paperwork. Went to all the meetings with the bank. The whole 9 yards. All they had to do was sign where I told them to. I remember Ryan didn't even show up to the closing because he had a raid in whatever game he was playing that week. I'd stop by at least once a week, usually on Sundays, to check in on them. Mom would cook dinner, the one thing she's actually good at, and we'd eat together. Ryan would sometimes emerge from his cave to grab a plate, and then disappear again. My dad would talk about his garden or what he saw on the news. Mom would ask when I was going to get back out there and meet someone new. It was a comfortable routine, and even though it was draining my bank account, It felt good to be needed. You know? After Sarah left, they were actually pretty supportive in their own way. Mom made me extra portions of food to take home. Dad offered awkward platitudes like, "Plenty of fish in the sea, son." Ryan said she was a jerk and I was better off without her, which was probably the nicest thing he'd said to me in years. But looking back, there were signs something was off, like how they stopped inviting me over randomly. It was always very scheduled, very planned. Or how sometimes I'd call and no one would pick up, even though I could see my dad's car in the driveway on the Ring doorbell I installed for them. Or how Ryan suddenly started buying new gaming equipment and clothes, despite having no job. When I asked where he got the money, he'd just shrug and say, "Saved up," or sold some old stuff online, which was nonsense because Ryan never saved $1 in his life. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too busy with work, too busy trying to forget about Sarah, too busy just keeping my head above water. So there I was, just another Tuesday afternoon at my parents' place. I'd taken a half day off work because my dad called asking for help with some computer stuff. This happens at least once a month. Either they can't figure out how to print something, or they've somehow managed to download 13 toolbars on their browser. This time, Dad needed to scan a bunch of documents for his doctor or something. I didn't really pay attention to the details because, honestly, does it matter? It's always some basic tech thing that would take them hours to figure out, but takes me, like, 10 minutes. "Thanks for coming over, son," Dad said when I walked in. "This new scanner Linda bought is giving me fits." The new scanner was actually one I'd bought them 3 years ago, but whatever, I didn't correct him. "No problem, Dad. Where's the stuff you need scanned?" He pointed to a stack of papers on the dining room table. "All of those into PDFs, and then I need them emailed." I nodded and got to work. It was mindless, repetitive stuff. Place document on scanner, press button, save file, repeat. I was about halfway through the pile when I came across a folder labeled Estate Plan and Last Will and Testament. Now, I'm not usually nosy, but considering I'd been bankrolling their lives for the past 5 years, I figured it wouldn't hurt to take a quick look just to see how things were set up, you know? Big mistake. I opened the folder, and my stomach dropped like I was on a roller coaster. There it was, in black and white. Everything, and I mean everything, was going to Ryan. The house I'd been helping pay for? Ryan's. Their savings, what little they had? Ryan's. The car I helped them buy 2 years ago? Ryan's. Every single asset they owned was being left to my brother. And me? I got a line about how we love both our sons equally, and a cheap watch that belonged to my grandfather, a watch that didn't even work anymore. I just sat there, staring at the paper, my hands literally shaking. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. After years of supporting them, after everything I'd done, this is how they repay me, by cutting me out completely? What's taking so long with those scans? Dad walked into the dining room, a coffee mug in hand. I didn't even try to hide what I was looking at. I just held up the will. "So, this is how it is? Everything goes to Ryan after everything I've done for you guys?" Dad's face went through like 5 different expressions in 2 seconds, then finally settled on this weird, condescending look, like I was overreacting. "Ethan, it's not what you think." "Really?" I said, feeling my calm slipping. "Because it looks pretty freaking clear to me. I've been paying your mortgage, helping with groceries, fixing the house up while Ryan does nothing, and you still decided he's the only one who matters." Dad looked uncomfortable but didn't deny anything. "It's complicated. Complicated." That's all he had to say. Then I called my mom. She came in, saw the will in my hand, and her face fell. She at least had the decency to look guilty, which was more than Dad managed. "Ethan, honey, we were going to tell you," I cut her off. "After I paid off the house completely? After I funded Ryan's lifestyle for another decade?" "It's not like that," she said, her voice doing that thing where she's trying to sound soothing but just comes across as patronizing. "You don't need the inheritance. You have a good job, a nice apartment, You're independent. Ryan, well, he struggles. We just want to make sure he's taken care of. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were seriously justifying cutting me out because I was responsible enough to hold down a job while rewarding Ryan for being a complete loser. So let me get this straight, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I get nothing because I work hard and take care of myself, while Ryan gets everything because he's a lazy mooch who can't keep a job. That's your logic? You're twisting our words, Dad said, getting defensive. Ryan has different needs. Different needs? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. The only thing he needs is a swift kick in the ass and a dose of reality. Mom sighed heavily. This is exactly why we didn't tell you. We knew you wouldn't understand. Understand what? That I'm just your personal ATM? That as long as I keep the bills paid, you don't actually give a damn about me? That's not fair, Ethan, Dad said, his voice raising. We love you both equally. I was almost shouting now. If you loved us equally, you wouldn't be giving Ryan everything while I get Jack. You wouldn't expect me to keep paying for a house that I'll never see a penny from. You wouldn't. I stopped mid-sentence as a horrible thought occurred to me. I looked at both of them, their guilty faces, and suddenly it clicked. How long have you been planning this? I asked, my voice suddenly very quiet. Was this always the plan? Let me pay for everything, then cut me out? They exchanged a look that told me everything I needed to know. Jesus Christ, I whispered. You've been using me this whole time. Ethan, that's not, Mom started, but I cut her off. Save it. I threw the will down on the table. I get it now. Crystal clear. I know exactly where I stand. I grabbed my jacket and keys, already heading for the door. Ethan, wait, Mom called after me. Let's talk about this. I turned back one last time. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it. I slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. I sat in my car for a minute, just breathing, trying to process what had just happened. 5 years? 5 years I'd been supporting them, and this is what I get. As I drove away, my phone started buzzing with texts from Mom. I ignored them all. I needed time to think, to figure out what to do next. One thing was certain, though. I wasn't giving them another penny. Not ever again. Let Ryan support them if he's so special. Let's see how long their precious golden child lasts, when he actually has to be responsible for once in his life. I'm not going to lie, I was a mess that night. Angry, hurt, confused, my emotions were all over the place. I ended up calling my buddy Jake around midnight. Yeah, I know, a jerk move to call so late, but I was spiraling. Poor guy listened to me rant for like an hour while I paced around my apartment like a caged animal. They're your parents, man, Jake said when I finally ran out of steam. Maybe there's more to it than you think. Like what? I snapped. What possible justification could there be? Jake didn't have an answer for that. Nobody would. I decided right then and there, no more Mr. Nice guy. No more bailing them out. No more being the responsible son who makes sure Mommy and Daddy keep their house. They made their bed with Ryan. Now they could lie in it. So I went completely silent. Didn't answer calls. Didn't respond to texts. Didn't even read the emails I'm sure were piling up. For the first time in literally years, I let them handle their own problems. Leaky faucet? Not my problem. Need groceries? Figure it out. Mortgage due? Too bad. The first couple of days were actually kind of freeing, like I'd finally broken out of some toxic pattern I'd been stuck in for years. I focused on work, went to the gym more, even met up with some old friends I hadn't seen in months because I was always too busy helping my parents. The silence lasted exactly 13 days, yes. I counted before the first text from Dad popped up on my phone. The property taxes are due. It was so on brand, I almost laughed. I stared at my phone for a good 5 minutes, debating whether to respond at all. Finally, I typed back. I'm sure Ryan will handle it since the house is his and all. It took exactly 4 minutes before Mom called. I let it ring through to voicemail. Then she texted, "Ethan, please don't be like this. We need to talk." Yeah, now they wanted to talk now that the bills were piling up and they realized their personal bank, aka me, had closed for business. I waited an hour before replying. There's nothing to talk about. I thought that would be the end of it for the day at least, but nope. Around 9:00 p.m., Ryan decided to chime in. His text almost made me throw my phone across the room. "Dude, why are you being such a drama queen? It's not a big deal. Just help them out like you always do." Not a big deal? Not a big deal? The absolute audacity of this freeloading jerk to tell me I was overreacting about being cut out of the will while he gets everything. I shot back, "Nah, I think you've got it covered since you're the favorite and all." His response came quickly. "Oh my God, are you seriously mad about the will? Grow up, man. It's just money, right?" Now that it was his money, it suddenly didn't matter. The hypocrisy was unreal. I replied, "Then you won't mind using some of that money to pay for the mortgage, right?" No response after that. Then I turned off my phone for the rest of the day. When I turned it back on the next morning, I found the ultimate proof that they saw me as nothing but a walking wallet, a bank transfer request from Mom. No message, no explanation, just a cold, shameless demand for $3,750, the exact amount they needed to cover their overdue mortgage and property taxes. They weren't even asking anymore. They were just assuming I'd cave like I always did. I declined it without hesitation. Not even 5 minutes later, Mom called. I let it ring. Then came another text, "Ethan, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it?" I took my time before replying, "Because it's not my responsibility. Try Ryan." She called again. I declined. Another text, "We're going to lose the house if you don't help us. Oh no, an emergency." After treating me like a walking ATM for years, they were finally facing consequences. I typed back, "Maybe you should have thought about that before deciding I didn't deserve anything." Dad jumped in. "You're really going to let your parents become homeless?" Wow, that one actually made me laugh out loud. The manipulation was so obvious, so desperate. They weren't broke, they had savings. They weren't about to be thrown on the streets. They just didn't want to dip into their own money because they were so used to me covering everything. I didn't bother responding. I was done with their guilt trips, done with being manipulated, done with the whole toxic dynamic. That night, Ryan texted again, "Dude, just send them the money already. You're making this a bigger deal than it is." I clenched my jaw, my thumbs flying over the keyboard. "You mean the same money you're inheriting? Why don't you send it?" His response was instant. "You know I don't have that kind of cash right now." Oh, so now it was about affordability. He was perfectly fine with me draining my accounts to support our parents. But the second it was his turn to step up, suddenly he had nothing to offer. "Guess you better figure it out then, bro," I replied. I went to bed that night feeling oddly at peace, like I'd finally stood up for myself after years of being a doormat. Then one day, everything cracked open. It started with an offhand comment from my coworker. "Hey, your family's been downstairs for a while. Your brother's been pacing, and your dad looks like he's about to punch a wall. Everything good?" I frowned. "Wait, how long have they been here?" She shrugged. "At least 30 minutes. The front desk was hoping they'd leave on their own before calling you." That set off alarm bells. If they'd been waiting that long, why hadn't they just called me directly? Something was off. Then the front desk called. "Your parents and Orion, your brother, I assume, are downstairs. They're making a bit of a scene. I told them not to let anyone up and went down to deal with whatever this was." And there they were, Mom, Dad, and Ryan, standing like some weird family tribunal. Mom was crying, Dad was seething, and Ryan just looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "What part of leave me alone didn't you understand?" I said, crossing my arms. "Ethan, please," Mom sniffled. "We just need to talk. Now you want to talk? After weeks of only demanding money?" "No thanks," Ryan groaned. "Dude, stop being dramatic. Just listen." I scoffed. That's rich coming from you. The argument went in circles. Family helps family. I was selfish. They needed me the usual. I finally told them to leave, or I'd call security. Then Dad rubbed his temple. Ethan, don't be ridiculous. You know your brother's had a lot on his plate. That made me pause. Ryan? A lot on his plate? Since when? Mom jumped in, desperate. We need to figure things out. We're trying to manage everything with the house, and things aren't easy. The house? I frowned. What's wrong with the house? Ryan exhaled sharply. It's not a big deal, okay? Just some changes. Something in his voice sent a chill down my spine. Mom wiped her eyes. You wouldn't understand, honey. It's complicated. Try me. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Look, we just thought with all the changes, maybe you'd want to be more involved. There it was again, changes. What the hell were they talking about? I was still stuck on that when Ryan muttered under his breath. Would have been easier if you just stayed out of it. And just like that, my brain started connecting the dots, the sudden strictness about when I could visit, Ryan mysteriously having new things despite having no job, Mom cutting calls short like someone was listening. Something wasn't right, and they were hiding it. On my way back up, I kept replaying everything. My coworker saying they'd been here way before I was called. The way Dad kept clenching his fists, like he was holding something back. How Mom glanced at Ryan every time I pushed back. Then other things started resurfacing in my mind, like how, in the past year, my parents suddenly got weirdly strict about when I could visit, or how Ryan somehow had new clothes and gadgets, despite having no job. Even little things, like the way Mom would cut phone calls short, saying, "Oh, I have to go," without explaining why. What could be those changes that Ryan has? I'd ignored all of it, but now it felt like pieces of a puzzle sliding into place. This wasn't just about money. Something bigger was going on. I'd been too busy, too stressed about work and my breakup with Sarah to connect the dots. But now I wondered, what were they hiding? On a hunch, I decided to drive by their house the next day, not to go in, just to see if anything looked suspicious. I parked down the street around 5:00 p.m., dinner time, and waited. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Dad's car was in the driveway. Ryan's piece of junk Honda was parked on the street. But then, around 6:15, another car pulled up, a blue Toyota I didn't recognize. The driver got out, grabbed some grocery bags from the trunk, and headed to the front door. It was a woman, and even from a distance, something about her seemed familiar, the way she walked. Her hair. My heart stopped when she turned slightly and I caught her profile. It was Sarah, my ex-fiancé. What the actual? She didn't knock or ring the doorbell. She just took out keys and let herself in like she lived there. I sat frozen in my car, unable to process what I'd just seen. Sarah had keys to my parents' house, the same Sarah who dumped me a year ago. The same Sarah who said she needed space and wanted different things. My mind was racing. Why would she be at my parents' house with groceries, using her own key? Unless not way. But the pieces were starting to fit together in the most horrifying way possible. The secrecy, Ryan's new stuff, the weird scheduling of my visits, the will. I texted my cousin Emma, who was always close with Mom. Hey, weird question, but do you know if Sarah's been hanging around my parents' house lately? The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again like she was typing, then deleting, then typing again. Finally, oh, I thought you knew. She's been living there for months with Ryan. My hands shook so bad I could barely type. What do you mean with Ryan? Her response made me want to puke. They're together. Have been since, like, a month after you guys broke up. Your parents didn't tell you? I couldn't breathe. The car felt like it was closing in on me. My brother and my ex-fiancé, living together in the house I'd been paying for, and my parents knew. They'd been covering for them, hiding it from me while happily taking my money. Suddenly, the will made perfect, twisted sense. The house wasn't just for Ryan, it was for Ryan and Sarah. They'd been planning this for months, making sure the happy couple would have a place to live after my parents were gone. I sat in my car for another hour, watching the house where the people who were supposed to love me most had betrayed me in the worst possible way. My parents, my brother, the woman I'd wanted to marry, all of them laughing behind my back while I paid the bills. I barely slept that night. My mind was racing with all kinds of messed up scenarios. How long had this been going on? Was Sarah cheating on me with Ryan before we broke up? Did my parents encourage it? Every possibility was worse than the last. By morning, I'd gone from shocked to straight-up nuclear. I called in sick to work, something I never do. My boss sounded concerned, but I couldn't focus on anything except getting answers. First, I needed confirmation. I texted Emma again, trying to sound casual. Hey, sorry to bug you again, but how long exactly have Ryan and Sarah been a thing? Her response took a while. I'm guessing she was debating whether to get involved in family drama. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they got together pretty soon after you guys split up, maybe a month or two. She was definitely living there by Christmas because she was at your parents' holiday party. Their holiday party. The one I skipped because I was working late. The one Mom tried really hard to get me to come to, then suddenly stopped pushing when I held firm. Now I knew why. I pressed for more. And my parents are obviously cool with this. Another delay before, yeah, they seem fine with it. Your mom's always posting pics of the four of them doing stuff together. Didn't you see them on Facebook? I hadn't. I muted my parents' social media during my throw myself into work phase after the breakup. Too depressing to see everyone else's perfect lives when mine was falling apart. I checked their profiles now, and holy crap, there they were. Dozens of photos of my parents, Ryan and Sarah, looking like one big happy family. Backyard BBQs, movie nights, even a weekend trip to the beach, all while I was paying their mortgage. In one particularly gut-wrenching photo from 3 months ago, Sarah was showing off a small diamond ring. The caption from my mom, "So happy to officially welcome Sarah to the family." They were engaged. My brother and my ex were engaged. I felt physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up, my whole body shaking. Then something inside me just snapped. The hurt transformed into rage. I got in my car and drove straight to my parents' house, no plan, just pure adrenaline and fury. It was around 10:00 a.m. on a Wednesday. Dad would be puttering around the garden. Mom would be doing her weekly cleaning. And Ryan never got up before noon unless the house was on fire. I didn't knock. I used my key and walked right in. The scene in the kitchen stopped me in my tracks. Sarah was at the stove, cooking something. Ryan was sitting at the table on his phone. They both looked up when I entered, and their faces, I wish I had a camera, pure deer in headlights shock. "Ethan," Sarah stammered, her face draining of color. "What are you doing here?" "I think that's my line," I said, surprised at how steady my voice was despite the hurricane inside me. "Considering I'm the one paying for this house." Ryan stood up, trying to look tough, but I could see he was nervous. "Dude, calm down. We can explain." "Explain what?" I shouted, finally losing my cool. "That you're shacking up with my ex? That you're engaged to her? That everyone's been lying to my face while I bankroll this whole setup?" Sarah was crying now. Of course she was. "Ethan, it just happened. We didn't plan it." "Save it," I cut her off. "How long? How long have you two been playing me for a fool?" They looked at each other, that silent communication between couples that felt like another slap in the face. "Since around the time we broke up," Sarah finally admitted. "Around the time, or before?" I pressed, needing to know just how deep this betrayal went. She looked at the floor. "Before. A few weeks before. So she had cheated. With my brother. And then fed me some crap about needing space and wanting different things when really, she just wanted a different Morgan brother." Just then, my parents walked in from the backyard, probably drawn by the shouting. They froze when they saw me. "Ethan?" Mom gasped. We didn't expect you. Obviously, I cut her off. Wouldn't want me interrupting the happy family, right? Guess my invitation to the engagement party got lost in the mail. Dad stepped forward. Son, let's all calm down and talk about this like adults. Like adults? I was yelling now, all pretense of calm gone. Was it adult to hide this from me? Was it adult to take my money while you all laughed behind my back? We weren't laughing, Mom said, tears in her eyes. Ryan and Sarah, they're good together. They make each other happy. And I was what? Collateral damage? The ATM who conveniently paid the bills while they played house? It's not like that, Sarah tried to interject. I turned on her, years of hurt and betrayal boiling over. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. Because from where I'm standing, you cheated on me with my brother, moved into the house I pay for, and planned to inherit it all without me ever finding out. Dead silence. No one could look me in the eye. Finally, Dad spoke up. Ryan needs Sarah, Ethan. She stabilizes him, helps him be responsible, and she needs someone who can be there emotionally. You were always working, so this is my fault. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Because I work hard? Because I've been supporting all of you? Mom stepped forward, reaching for my arm. I jerked away from her touch. We just want everyone to be happy, she pleaded. Including you, I laughed. Well, mission accomplished, Mom. I'm ecstatic. I looked at each of them, my parents who betrayed me, my brother who stole my fiancé, and Sarah who cheated on me with the one person who should have had my back, these people I trusted, who I thought were my family. You know what? I said, a strange calm settling over me. You're right about one thing. The house should go to Ryan and Sarah. They all looked relieved for a split second before I dropped the bomb. Too bad it's not your house to give away. You should have seen their faces. Mom looked confused, Dad went pale, Ryan looked like I was speaking Chinese, and Sarah just froze with her mouth half open. What are you talking about? Dad finally managed. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my email, and found what I was looking for. Remember that refinance I helped you with 3 years ago? The one where I did all the paperwork and you just signed where I told you? Dad nodded, looking increasingly concerned. You didn't read the documents, did you? Any of them? Mom glanced at Dad nervously. There were so many papers. Yeah, there were, I said, including the one that transferred ownership of the house to me. The room went dead silent. That's, Ryan finally sputtered. You're lying. I turned my phone so they could see the screen, showing the property deed with my name on it. It's a rent-to-own arrangement. Technically, you've been renting from me for the past 3 years. You tricked us. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. No, I protected you, I corrected. I was worried about your financial situation, and this was the safest way to make sure you'd never lose the house if things went south. Ironic, huh? Dad's face was turning an alarming shade of red. You had no right. I had every right. It's amazing what people can legally do when they're the ones paying for everything. Ryan lunged at me then, but I was ready for it. I sidestepped, and he stumbled past me, knocking into the kitchen counter. You snake, he shouted. You can't just steal our parents' house. I didn't steal anything. They signed it over willingly. And now, as the legal owner, I'm giving you all 30 days to get out. Sarah started sobbing. You can't do this. Where will we go? Not my problem, I shrugged. Maybe you can find another sucker to bankroll your love nest. Mom was in full panic mode. Ethan, please, we can work this out. Dad tried a different approach. Think about what you're doing, son. We're your parents. You'd really throw your own family out on the street? I didn't respond to any of that. I just walked to the door, then turned back. 30 days. Not 1 day more. I suggest you start packing. As I left, I heard Ryan shouting threats and Mom crying, but I didn't look back. I was done. The next few weeks were chaos. My phone blew up with calls and texts from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly very concerned about family unity and forgiveness. Funny how none of them offered to house my parents or help financially. I got a lawyer to handle the eviction process properly. Turns out, everything was completely legal. The house was mine, fair and square. On day 30, I showed up with the sheriff to make sure they were out. Mom and Dad had already moved in with my aunt, but Ryan and Sarah were still there, claiming they needed more time. Too bad. Watching the sheriff make them leave was both the hardest and most satisfying moment of my life. Sarah was crying. Ryan was threatening to make me pay, but all I felt was relief like a weight I'd been carrying for years was finally gone. I put the house on the market the next day. It sold within a week for $50,000 above. Asking price. The housing market was insane. Every cent went into my bank account. A few days after closing, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. You happy now? You ruined everyone's lives just to be petty. Hope it was worth it. Ryan. I blocked the number without responding and cut them off completely. There was nothing left to say. The truth is, I didn't feel anything. I just felt free from obligation, free from being used, free from a family that never really valued me. I used some of the money to buy a nice condo downtown, invested the rest, and started rebuilding my life. During that time, Sarah sent one message that was basically a non-apology. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. We can't help who we fall in love with kind of crap. I didn't bother responding. The weirdest part? My extended family basically split into two camps, Team Ethan and Team Parents/Ryan. Thanksgiving is going to be awkward for years to come, I guess. But here's where things get better. After dealing with the house drama, I took a hard look at my life. I joined this local rock climbing gym, figured it would be a good way to get in shape and maybe meet some new people. That's where I met a girl. She was this badass instructor who didn't take crap from anyone. First thing she said to me was, "Your form is terrible. You're going to hurt yourself." Then proceeded to show me exactly what I was doing wrong, no sugarcoating, just straight facts. I was kind of intimidated at first, but there was something refreshing about her honesty. After a few classes, I worked up the nerve to ask her out for coffee. She said no, then suggested beer instead because coffee dates are for job interviews, not getting to know someone. That girl is different from anyone I've ever dated. She's independent, speaks her mind, and doesn't need me to take care of her. She has her own place, her own career, her own life that she's invited me into, rather than expecting me to build one for her. When I eventually told her the whole drama with my family, she didn't give me the typical, "but they're your family" speech. She just said, "They treated you like an ATM, not a son. You did what you had to do," then changed the subject to what movie we were watching. That night, no drama, no making it a bigger deal than it needed to be. It's still early days with my girl, but for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm with someone who wants me, for me, not for what I can provide or do for them. As for my family, I'm still no contact with all of them. Maybe someday that'll change, but I'm not in any rush. I've realized I don't owe anyone a relationship just because we share DNA. So that's where things stand now. I'm dating someone awesome, working a job I actually enjoy. Oh yeah, I switched careers too. Life's too short for corporate, and slowly building a circle of friends who actually care about me. For the first time in forever, I'm putting myself first. And you know what? It feels pretty damn good. Thanks for listening, Reddit. Your support has meant more than you know. Edit. Holy crap, this blew up overnight. To answer some common questions, yes, I did consult a lawyer before the eviction. No, I haven't heard from Sarah since. And yes, my girlfriend knows I post on Reddit. Hi babe, if you somehow find this.